This is UN50. My name is BJ Council, and welcome back. Today we have actually my neighbors, Leslie and Mayowa. They're going to be talking about their biracial couple, and we kind of want to have a discussion about this moment for them from their perspective and raising a daughter during this time. So as per usual, just a reintroduction of my co-host. So Harmony.
Every time you call on me, I get equally as flustered about what to say, even though I generally say the same things every time. But hey, y'all, my name is Harmony. I am a 24-year-old living in Durham, North Carolina, committed to radical love and kindness as advocacy. I'm a social worker by profession, and I'm currently a fundraising fellow for the Southeast Climate and Energy Network.
Thanks, Harmony. Drew, and you're my favorite nephew because what?
Because I'm the only nephew.
That's right.
My name is Drew or Andrew. I'm a current student at UNC Greensboro. I'm a writer. I'm also just trying to stay alive.
And he always says that. So one of the first things I just want to talk about is some events that have been going on across the country with individuals being, 911 calls coming on Black bodies, simply because they're doing barbecue or walking in Central Park and stuff like that. So just kind of wanted to just hear from you guys, Andrew and Harmony, first as to how you kind of feel about that. People just dialing 911 and calling on police, interacting with Black folks simply because they're just doing what they do, just going about their normal routines. So any comments on that?
I think it's absolutely bogus that as adults, we don't have the communication skills to go up to somebody and say, hey, what you're doing is offensive to me, or it's bothering me, or it's unsafe, it's putting somebody in harm's way. But also I feel like a lot of those standards aren't met, and people are just calling the police because it's an easy way out and because they're annoyed. And I think that there need to be harsher penalties for people that think that 911 is a petty way to get somebody to disperse.
Right. Andrew?
Some cities are giving other resources to citizens to not call 911 because we've seen in multiple instances, for example, the Elijah McClain story or the incident that happened with him, that I believe, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the person who called 911 on him said that there was no danger present, but they still called 911. So I felt like there was something else that this person could have done instead of calling 911. But it makes me upset to think that that's the first thing that goes to people's heads.
Yeah, and I think Harmony, we talked about it before, is like more screening possibly at the 911, because just walking down the street doesn't necessitate something is wrong. I mean, I'm the only Black person who lives on my street. Mayowa's behind me, but I'm the only one on my street. If I have break-ins, I think the communication and the first interaction would be then the person walking down the street doesn't know there's been a break-in. There's been several break-ins in my community. There's no way that they would know that. And they also would know that I've got really old people on my street who probably are nervous from the break-in. So what we would hope is that we have an officer that understands what's going on in my community. So when he interacts or she interacts with a person on my street, is able to say, you may not be aware that, but there's been some break-ins here. And people are calling, not necessarily because you're Black and on the street, but because there have been particular crimes and you're not familiar with them. I mean, really, I think it depends on that initial interaction as to how they communicate that, instead of just coming off, well, what you're doing on the street, instead of going, there have been some break-ins in this community. So we just need to, and this is what we, somebody called, could we see your ID? And then just keep it moving. And then hopefully the person they interact with, is reasonable and understands that we're just not talking to you because of X, Y, Z. So I think it's that initial conversation. So Leslie and Mayowa last year, I think it was last year. Was it last year, Leslie?
It's been 12 months ago, but I think it was 2019.
2019, yeah, okay. And there was an incident, there was a vehicle chase. I think it was a vehicle chase, and the car ended up being stopped near our area, right near your intersection, right behind my house. And Mayowa wanted to go out and check on the neighbor, who was an elderly lady across the street. but you and your daughter said no. You didn't want him to go out because you were concerned for his safety because he's a Black male, and you didn't want him to get possibly stopped or be mistaken for possibly the bad guy. Is that, am I kind of condensing that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. so that's kind of the springboard, because I know I had said something about talking to you guys about that, because when you said that, I was like, oh my God, you know, how is that, you know, for the dynamic in your family to deal with that. So tell me, let's just talk about that incident for just a minute, you know, with you and your daughter having it. And you were the one that came out of the house. You're the one that did it because you're a white female, and you're like, well, I got to go do it because I don't want my Black husband to come out because he might get stopped by the popo. So let's talk about that for a minute.
You want to kick it off?
Sure. I think it's really just something that I think is, it didn't even occur to me that I was in that danger before it occurred to me that our neighbor might need help. So you react as you would as a human being, which is to render service or help. And then someone else has to point out to you that you actually have to think about that. And that's when you remember, oh yeah, this is the society I'm in. So, yeah.
I think that Mayowa's last part of what he just said is really significant. He did not grow up in the United States, grew up in Nigeria with, you know, very different dynamics, obviously. So, yeah, I guess his worry about our neighbor maybe is in parallel my worry about him in that moment. Not that I wasn't, you know, didn't have care for our neighbor as well, but BJ, when you wrote about this, when kind of proposing that we be on the podcast, the way you framed it also was really enlightening to me. In that moment, I was like hemming him in for his, you know, natural humanistic impulses, and that just is so expletive-y.
Right. Yeah.
You know, that's just, I hate that. But yeah, genuinely, and I'm much more of a scaredy cat, and I also recognize like I implicated you in this. So, you know, just all sorts of not awesome scenario, but yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I guess we just kind of, how difficult, you know, to navigate that. I mean, I hear Mayowa saying, you know, I didn't even think about it, I was just going to do it. And then you kind of had to remind him that you're Black, you can't do that. You know, so, I mean, what is that? What is that dynamic to having to be able to say, well, slow your roll, bro, you're Black, you can't do that right now. I mean, so, I mean, that's powerful. I mean, that has to have some impact on just, you know, you physically and mentally. I mean, what is that about? I mean, how does it feel for you guys?
Well, I think it's really most difficult in the context of having a child who's brown, and just really against my what's my typical answer to that question of what's the meaning of life. I usually think that the meaning for me, that the meaning of life is that whether it's yours or not, there will be future generations after you. And so you're supposed to make the world not worse, but hopefully better. And she didn't have a choice in coming into this world. And I just feel like more of a failure for not for bringing her into a world where she will have to deal with that. I really think that there's a sense of personal and communal failure that I feel when I hear about, or when I think about these kinds of situations. So that's really, it's really not the concern about me as it is, as much as it is for my child and future generations.
You think that's cultural, Mayowa, because you're from Nigeria? You think, because of, you just come from you come from just a whole different world. You think that's the space because it's cultural? I mean, you're in America, right? And so this is kind of the way Black folks have always dealt with stuff, when it comes to Black bodies. You think that's part of it? Where your journey comes from?
I've heard my my parents, when my dad was alive and my mom till today, speak or lament about how they feel that they had, because of corruption and economic lack of economic opportunity for a lot of people in Nigeria. Granted, there's a lot of good, but because of the many struggles that most Nigerians have, my parents have talked about feeling like they've failed future generations. And so I think that there's a sort of universality about it, that each society might have places where it can be better. And I think that, to me, the single, I think the single most glaring failure in this country is the inequality.
Yes, definitely. You guys got any questions, or Harmony, anything?
So my question for you guys was, how have you talked to your daughter about things like police brutality and the reality of being brown, but also, being white as well? What was that conversation like for you guys?
I would say it's ongoing and imperfect, and I would say over the last few years, I've found that when, at least I'll speak for myself in my attempts at having conversations, it's like I don't want to talk about this kind of thing. So I'm more tentative than when she was younger, because I want to respect her, clear kind of sense of boundary setting, while at the same time it's super important, and I want to help her to contextualize what she's hearing. For me, it's really this, I've strived for a balance of being real from as well as I can be, and also it's real in so many different ways, but like for her to understand, we live in an unjust society, historically grounded as that. And I really want her to understand that people have always fought against that and worked in solidarity. And that balance, I think, is important. I don't know if it's a true balance, but in other words, there is a countervailing force, and there are people who, stand together and say this is wrong. And for her to understand that resistance is part of our history and our present and future as well. So I could say a lot more, I think, but I don't know.
No, I love that. I think that that's so important as a parent. I'm not a parent, but I imagine that if I have children, I want them to be hopeful about the future, but I also want them to be realistic about, you know, the state of our world. So yeah, that's really impactful. And I think it's beautiful that you want to respect those boundaries while also being real, but also, you know, counteracting that negativity with hope.
My aspiration.
It sounds like you're doing a great job.
You're very kind.
So how is it? I mean, with everything that's on TV and all the stuff that's going on, I mean, I know, you know, how are you handling, because I know she's seeing it, and how are you guys handling it as you move through this moment? Because it's just, we talked a couple of podcasts ago that Chris and I were struggling with this stuff, you know, and you guys know this is what I do. So I mentioned that we're kind of seeking counseling now because she's struggling because she has this concern that she doesn't want to be seen as a crying white person, you know, and knowing that the issue is more about Black bodies right now. So she's like, where do I fit in that? And in this, you know, biracial relationship, not for me to view her as a white female when what are you all upset about? This is about Black bodies, and I don't look at her like that. So just as this our relationship it's having an impact, and I never really expected it to. So I don't know whether that's something that's happening with you guys. Not that, you know, I don't want anything to happen between y'all as a relationship, but I'm just saying it's just that dynamic has now entered this relationship because we are a biracial couple. And it may not for you, you know, but that's just where we are. And it may be because of the work that I do, because I'm constantly looking at this stuff. I'm constantly talking about this stuff. And so I bring a lot of this into the relationship because of the work that I do. So it's just a lot. So how are you guys just basically handling this moment?
Well, I think back to a friend of mine early in President Obama's first term, who I was talking to, and I mentioned President Obama in the context of being a Black president, and he was ready for an argument because he said, "Why are you calling him Black? He's biracial." And I say, I said to him what I say to Haviva now, that in this society, you're brown, you're Black, okay? It doesn't matter if you're not, quote, lily white, the society will see you as Black and brown and treat you the way that this society treats people who are Black and brown. So just don't have any fantasies that you're going to be cut a break because somebody will think that you're part white.
Right.
Yeah, so that's one way that I think I'm addressing this time with her, is that she has a big stake in this, and also I think teaching her or telling her, urging her to, and her mom is too, to fight, to not shy away from the debate of the day, the year, the decade, the century, the history of this country. There's nothing to me more significant about this country. To me, I don't care how many so-called explorers or inventors who are white, or how much history there is, that all the diversity in this country number one, to me, identity is that it is of a racist character significantly.
Yeah, that's huge.
It's like a mouthful. Yeah.
That is, yeah. That's
a
true.
mouthful, but the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and can't deny it. I mean, like people are just don't want to accept the history. They just will not accept the history. Drew, you got anything?
I keep thinking back to a statement that Leslie said at the beginning about how she kind of had to put a pause on her partner's like humanness because of his race or his skin tone. And I think that just sticks out with me about how I guess how your daughter would have to do just in life throughout her whole life, just in general, and have to. It's saddening actually think that we have to do that as humans, just to put a pause on what we want to do as human beings and help and to be compassionate and to be empathetic, but we have to put a pause on it just because of our skin tone. So that I'm always going to have that in my brain. I thank you.
I mean, I think it's something that I'd want to question as well. I mean, but it just shows that rock in a hard place. I mean, I don't really want to go through the rest of my life thinking there is a rock in a hard place. There's got to be a way to like sledgehammer.
Right. Yeah. So when you know, I don't know, I guess for me, just trying to figure out when you're in that space and someone, you know, is just being racist or they're making comments. I mean, how do you guys deal with that? I mean, how is that something you address, or you just kind of, you know, just kind of move through that space? How is that for, you know, making sure that, you know, that you're true to yourself, you know, knowing, you know, you're in a biracial couple and, you know, you just trying to make sure everybody respects that. You know what I'm saying? So how is that for you guys?
You know, we, I think, are really fortunate to live here.
Yes.
So there's the bubble factor.
Yeah.
I think I have a few, and this may be because of my own positionality in the world too, but I have few examples of anything overt.
Right.
And I'm with my family. And when I'm not, I'm passing as, you know, accepting of the world order.
Right.
Which
Yeah.
which troubles me. So, you know, I don't know if some certain things come to mind. I think of a funny situation in Texas, which is sort of, do you know what I'm talking about? In line for the barbecue?
No.
All right. So we used to live in Texas, and we were camping in like a less populated, what we think of as less populated area. And we went to this barbecue place, and we heard mumbling behind us, like biracial couple. And we turned around, and it was a biracial couple, or a a mixed race couple. So like they were, you know, because they were happy.
I swear, I don't know if y'all have this experience, but as a Black person, if I ever see another Black person like out in nature, because I enjoy being outside, I'm like, all right, my people, you know what I mean? It feels good not to be alone.
Yeah.
That's funny. Start waving at him, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. I mean, I don't know. I guess you know, Mayowa. So as far as, you know, what do you do? I mean, what kind of work do you do? Tell me a little bit about that.
I'm an architect, and I think I started out sort of traditionally going to college, undergrad, and grad, both for architecture, and then working the first almost couple of decades the traditional way of designing and observing construction and all that kind of stuff. But now I've sort of moved significantly away from that, but I'm still in the world of managing like a campus sort of infrastructure system, which is everything from the engineering heavy stuff to the buildings. So I don't sit down with clients and think about designs of buildings anymore. I think about the nuts and bolts, what's leaking, what's clogged, what needs to get a new roof, things like that.
So I need to call you then.
For that, just the money, where the dollars have to go to fix those things.
Cool. And what do you do, Leslie?
I work at a large health institution in town. I work in population health, but I'm like a healthcare administration, I guess you could say. But my background is, I hark back to the days when I worked in the nonprofit sector. I worked in youth development, and that's really kind of, I guess that type of work is where my gut and my heart and my soul are all entangled. So where I can bring those pieces of me to where I am now is meaningful. Yeah.
Cool.
She wouldn't say it, but so her undergrad degrees are one is in archaeology, and the other one is in African and African American studies. And she went to grad school in anthropology.
Whoa.
So, yeah.
Wow.
I've learned a lot from her.
Cool. Always about love. So let me ask you one of the things, some of the topics that are going on right now is about defunding police, abolish police. So where are you guys on those types of discussions?
Yeah.
So it sounds like both of you have an opinion on that one. Go ahead.
I'll just let it be known that I am absolutely 100% for that. This is America. You hit people in the pocketbooks, like they say, and I think when they don't have, when those who have ill intentions don't have the money, that's usually the thing that forces a lot of people to behave better in this country, is my view.
I would say that whole kind of conversation resonates strongly with me. I feel like I absolutely makes perfect sense to me, the reduction in funding, the scaling back of resources, the demilitarization of police, all of that. As far as complete abolition, I don't think I fully have explored that in my own head. I'm sympathetic to the idea of overturning systems. So, but then when I think about okay, what is that in real practical terms? Because I'm also a pragmatist, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I mean, we have had a period during COVID where police are not apt to, answer all of their calls. And I've heard that, the kind of crime statistics are going down. We know that the police murdering Black people is not going down, because, that's obviously a crime. But, at the beginning of our conversation, we were talking a little bit about having other means to address things in our community. And I was reminded of a time 3 or 5 years ago where we're driving at night on the little highway with all the stoplights, and there was a man walking against traffic, kind of not on the side of the road, he was in danger, his physical life. And all I knew to do was call 911. And at the same time, I know that could mean that he was less safe. And that's more in hindsight that I think about it in those terms. But what else do we have there? I absolutely think that the breadth of supposed expertise is not right. I mean, there shouldn't be police addressing a mental health crisis, and any number of other things. And I like the model of like police not having guns. I'm really anti-gun in every way. So, yeah, I think the abolition question is something I think I'm a little shy about that, to be very honest, but I'm very for restriction for sure.
I think I think that when I think about defunding the police, I don't imagine the police not existing.
Right.
I think it is the opportunity that it presents for a rethink that I'm interested in. If the police have less of a budget than what they typically have, which some would say is probably just not evenly distributed there. So maybe there'll be just some thoughtfulness about whether you really need to buy armored vehicles versus more community building sort of things. And just let's force that conversation by reducing the budget and see where things lead. That's my thought.
Okay. You guys got any comment? Because we've been down this conversation before and we've had some opinions. So I'll defer to the youngers in the room first before I chime in. You guys got any comment?
I mean, I think that I echo the same sentiments as you guys of, definitely thinking that we need to move beyond this corrupt system that was built off of slavery. I think it's a lot more doable than people make it out to seem. We just have to be creative and be bold and brave and in this thought process, right? I think that for us in America, this is so radical and seems so bold and scary just because we've never been able to imagine a society that, is able to kind of be self-correcting. Yeah, so I'm all for it. We've seen where it works well in other countries. And I think that by defunding the police, and really what that is allocating resources elsewhere, you're also able to do a better job of protecting police who are going into these situations uneducated and ignorant to certain mental health things, and they might end up killing somebody. And I don't imagine that anybody, joins the police force to sign up to kill somebody, especially if they're mentally ill. So I think that there are a lot of ways that we can do a better job of protecting officers by making sure that those who are well equipped to handle those situations are in position to do so.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to echo what Harmony said. And we talked about a lot in our previous episodes about allocating resources, and you educated me about how, different parts of city and state, where money goes to where. So I think it's important that police officers as well as citizens just educate themselves about where the money is going so that we can vote and we can do things to make sure that the money is going in the right place.
Right.
Yeah. And I think for me, because obviously I used to be the popo, just trying to understand that what we talked about in a previous with Steve Chalmers, the retired police chief, is basically if we have these other resources held accountable, like county government is where all the soft services are. That's where your social service, that's where your mental health, that's where your, all that is there. So that's the group that needs to be funded. And once those individuals are funded in order to take care of the homeless guy that's always at the corner of Roxborough and Cornwallis, that's in the back of the police car, but I don't have anywhere to take him. And the only tool I have as law enforcement is to take him to jail. And so we've got to figure out as a community, okay, well, maybe we need to have a space for that police officer to take this homeless guy, because just running him off this property, he ain't got nowhere to go. So we got to figure out, we can't arrest ourselves out of homelessness. We can't arrest ourselves out of mental health. So instead of defunding police in the way Steve said, it was basically, it will happen naturally if these other groups start doing what they're supposed to do. social services starts handling these individuals that need mental health, starts doing what they're supposed to do, then that means that I, as a police officer, I don't have to worry about the guy at the corner anymore, because now he's getting help for his mental illness. He's has somewhere to live. He's on his medication, and that's a call I ain't got to answer no more, because I didn't want to answer it in the beginning. So, and we also have to just keep in mind that for Durham, and like you said, Leslie, we're kind of in a bubble. We demilitarized ages ago. I mean, we stopped buying a bunch of military stuff. There's some things that you just need because there's some things that are going to happen. But we kind of backed off of that for Durham PD ages ago, because Durham was just different. But some communities believe in, they got to have all the bells and whistles and all that kind of stuff. So defunding for me, and I like the way Steve put it, that if the rest of society, those rest of these society ills do their job, then the need for police is going to be, the less money will need to be spent on them having to answer these calls. It's like Harmony keeps saying, we don't have to respond to mental health. We got to figure out who can do that without us. So yeah, that's kind of where I am.
Now, BJ, I'm going to have to say something about the rest of society doing their jobs. I think that social workers are doing beyond their jobs. But again, that's why it's reallocating resources, right? So this is why I am all about abolishing the system of modern day policing, because modern day policing says that we have police officers that are pious and good and care about protecting folks, which is sometimes true, but they have this ability to really affect your freedom. And it's not people that are trained, I think, well, most of the time on de-escalation. These aren't people that have, the skill set or even just the education really to be able to respond to some of these calls that don't necessarily need police involvement, that don't necessarily require force. But again, we gotta be able to pay these folks. I think the thing about social work specifically is, one, how little social workers are paid, two, the lack of really incentive and resources for them to even be able to access other therapists or go to the doctor when they don't feel well. So I just had to come on the record hard for my fellow social workers, because there are a lot of good people doing good work, I think, on both sides. But again, it's how we attribute value as a society, which is why a lot of the funding goes towards putting people in private prisons as a way to generate money, and as modern day slavery. And two, really holding folks who allocate budget accountable. I think that's why the Other America movement right now is so poignant. I don't know if you guys have heard about this group, but they're actually camping outside of the Durham Police Department, saying that, Mayor Steve Schul, we want more money for our Black communities, and in these food deserts, we don't want you to continue funding police. And I think that as we, because we talked about community reparations in the podcast before that, I think in order to really set the precedent for that, we have to listen to community members about what their needs are in their communities. Because like Steve said, most people are not going to say crime. They're going to say that people are hungry. There are carbon monoxide leaks at McDougal Terrace. Our kids are being kicked off of free and reduced lunch. We don't know how we're going to keep the power on this month. So I think a lot of the responsibility for reparations is for those of us who are affluent or are in power or see ourselves kind of removed from that situation, start actually listening to community members about what they say is necessary in order for those communities to thrive, because clearly policing is not changing the projects.
Yes. Totally. Yeah, Harmony is my radical person. Not radical, but and you're correct. I appreciate you correct, because I wasn't saying that they needed to do their work. I should have said was, you can't have a social worker carrying 50 cases in order to do something. And so that's the issue. You just got to hire more individuals to be able to focus on individuals, to be able to actually make a difference. But social workers are overworked, mental health folks are overworked, and so it's going to have to follow the dollar, because you got to pay for it. If you want this thing to work, you're going to have to pay for it. So yeah, so my apologies to you, Miss Social Worker.
No, I knew BJ. I knew that wasn't what what you meant, but I felt like, we had to clear the record, as they say, before this went live. And they're like, oh my God, she's anti-social worker. But so I just wanted to clear that up.
Yeah.
But yeah, BJ, like you said, you gotta follow the dollar. And then, many guests have said, like, that's where you got to go. Hit them where it hurts, which is in the pocketbook. And I know that we've not really talked about this, but maybe this is something that we can explore in further episodes. But private prisons and for-profit prisons, like, I think once we start addressing what is making these folks so much money, the quicker we can progress the conversation around police brutality and mass incarceration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You guys got what about I want to get back to your daughter. Just want to ask her, is she wearing Black Lives Matter t-shirts?
No.
Okay. I just thought I'd ask. See how she was doing.
Yeah.
How old is your daughter?
Hey, she's 13.
Oh, so she's still, she's 13. I can't even imagine, like, navigating being a 13-year-old and also trying to, like, figure out my identity. Just for full transparency, I'm biracial as well. My experience as far as, like, my parents, specifically my mom, because she's white, understanding this notion that, like, Black lives do matter and race is actually an issue and we're not a post-racial society, was really difficult for her, and I think remains a really difficult topic. That's how I got my name Harmony, actually, is because she wanted harmony between the races. So I think that she is so just caught up on this idea of being colorblind and race doesn't matter that she really didn't teach me about, my own Blackness in that regard. And then on the opposite side, I had a dad who was super, super radical and Black, and proud to be Black. He was a reason why the Oxford riots started after Dickie Merrill was killed. He was originally a part of the Wilmington 10, but basically everybody that was there said go back because he would have been considered AWOL. So he was in Vietnam at the time and, went back to post. So I can't imagine being 13 and trying to navigate this in this way, because when I was 13, we still had social media, but it wasn't to the degree that it is now. And I don't know about you, BJ, or you, Leslie, but I swear to you, when I turned 13, I feel like I lost my mind.
Yeah.
Like overnight. So.
Complicated time of life for sure. And then
yes, oh my goodness.
All the other madness.
Yeah, we're fortunate that we can have, I guess we can have conversations. Some of them are not very wordy, but I think we have, we're engaged with a smart person. So we're lucky.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
And, her school is really engages around this as well. So I just feel really lucky about that too. And she may be kind of overhearing or not, I'm not sure. I think as I alluded or mentioned earlier, I just think there's some sort of maybe feeling of some oversaturation that she's now like pushed back on. I would say I feel very fortunate to have studied African American studies in undergrad and be immersed in a lot of ideas that were countervailing to what is all around us and stuff. So, but it doesn't change the fact that I've grown up white and am highly influenced by the dominance of that. I'm Jewish too, and that kind of affects my whiteness, but I've started to just recognize that I am white much more having moved to the South because I grew up in the North. So, it's just interesting and complicated, but our parenting and parenting's always challenging.
Yeah.
Getting it right enough.
Well, Leslie, I kind of want to go back to the fact you said, you studied African studies and things like that. So I want to make sure understand how that impacts how you communicate, with your daughter, because you did have that study. But I want to also make sure of what I'm hearing, because my mother is 90 and she was teaching during segregation, and then there was integration. And so once it became integrated, the history became sanitized about slavery. So I guess what I'm asking is, it because you know the real history, and so you're able to communicate based on, because you know the real deal. Kids today don't know. Even Andrew at an earlier, some of the stuff on the slave patrols, he had kind of heard about it, but because they don't teach that stuff in school, even our Black kids don't know the history. Yeah. So when you say that, are you saying you know the history?
I'm going to say there's always more to know, learn, and understand, but thanks to focusing on that in college, and then kind of self-study afterwards, and grad school as well. It is, I would say, the counter narratives that are I'm a skeptic of the notion of truth, to be honest, but that clearly is the truer. History is always going to, be a distillation of things, and, what do you say and what are you not saying, and things like that. So, but, to know so much more from other perspectives than the white dominant history tellers, I think I feel like a lot of gratitude about that exposure.
Cool. That's awesome. I think we can almost end on that, because I think for me, what's happening now is people are getting exposed to history. They're like, oh, you know what I'm saying? Because they didn't know.
Yeah.
And sometimes not to a fault of their own, but just the way, is Harmony, it's just systemic. You're not even educated about the history of Black folks, or just history in itself. So now folks are going, oh, okay, now we know, or now we're becoming more. I was just listening to something on Data TV. They're talking about all these books, these anti-racist books, history about racism, all Black history. They're like flying off the shelf now,
right.
because people are like, oh, that's good stuff, and we need to know, and it's going to help this movement. So if nothing else, I think it's knowledge is power.
Yeah,
knowledge is power, and then people can understand why the conversation is the way the conversation is. And I think also that has an impact on law enforcement. We're talking about young individuals who don't understand why a Black person in a Black community is looking at you sideways, because they come from the space of they can't trust the system. So if you don't understand why they're looking at you all crazy, then that you're just starting out wrong, because you're thinking it's something else when it's years of oppression. But if you understand why they're looking at you that way, then it kind of helps that stuff. So, yeah. So look, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to hang out with us and give us input and insight to you and your family. Drew, you got anything as we get ready to say goodbye?
I just thank you for coming and talking to us. I learned a lot about y'all's family and your insight as well too. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Harmony?
You guys.
Yeah, it was really nice to hear just a different experience that another biracial girl is growing up with. So I'm happy to know that you guys affirm her Blackness and are also giving her the space to both experience being 13, but also doing your best to insulate her as much as possible. I think that's what parents should be doing, and something that parents of Black and brown kids really struggle with. So you are not alone in this struggle, and I think that you're doing great.
Thanks, you guys. Yeah, thanks for coming. You guys got any parting words, any words of wisdom for us?
I just really appreciate what you guys are doing here. More more power to you. And thank you for inviting us. That's very humbling. I appreciate it. And it's great to have you as a neighbor, BJ.
Thank you. You guys make it easy, so I appreciate it.
Wonderful. And you've been great, BJ. And Harmony and Andrew, I've listened to a couple of podcasts that you all have done, and just really gives me a lot of hope. Thank you very much. And thanks for your compelling questions tonight. It's gonna make us think about a lot of things. And also just want to recognize that I came here 30 years ago, and 31 years ago for college. And it's, I want to just recognize the people who made it possible for me to exist in this country as a Black person and still be alive. I'm very thankful.
Wow, cool. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks again for coming. And for those of you listening, thanks for listening to UN50. My name is BJ Council. Check us out on the website at un5-o.com, and check out our Facebook, Instagram, and I think Twitter maybe, but you know. And thanks to our team, Chris Downey, our producer, and Abby Bradadich, and she's heading on her way down to Texas on this particular, she wasn't able to join us tonight. She's going to her sister's wedding. So hopefully, Abby, you're having a safe trip. So thanks again. As always, stay safe, stay well. Peace.